March has been over for a minute now, which means it is that time for me to talk about what I've been playing. So yeah, this is what I played in March. The game I spent the most time with throughout the month was Balatro, which I imagine was the case for a lot of you, as I swear everyone I know was hopelessly addicted to it for a little bit there. In case you missed it though, it is a roguelike deck builder where you score points by playing poker hands, and you improve the amount of points you score through collecting various cards, whether it be planet cards that increase the strength of different hands, tarot and spectral cards that offer all sorts of ways to improve your deck, or most importantly, jokers, which add rules to how your deck works that you can combine in interesting ways to improve your deck immensely. Like some reward playing face cards, where others reward playing smaller hands, and figuring out how to best utilize the different abilities that come with the jokers is a ridiculous amount of fun. Each run feels fresh due to all the possibilities, and while I definitely gravitated towards certain jokers whenever they would pop up, I never felt like I found a set meta. There was just always something new for me to test. Another aspect I found really rewarding is that there are a handful of mechanics that when I first saw them, I wondered why anyone would use them. For instance, you can skip blinds to earn various tags that have different abilities, but this means missing out on earning money and powering up your jokers from actually playing through the blind, and for a while it didn't seem like the majority of the tags outweighed those benefits. However, once I better understood the game and got more comfortable with it, I started skipping blinds all the time and taking gambles with tags in the hopes of getting good rewards, as there is a lot of potential to build an awesome deck from that. There were a few other things like this, and I don't know, I just like the process of going from thinking a mechanic is useless to seeing it has incredible value, and I think Balatro does a good job of introducing its mechanics early and showing how valuable they are through playing instead of telling. Yeah, honestly, I don't have all that much bad to say about the game. If I had to pick at something, which I don't, but I will because I'm me, I guess I don't love how front-loaded failure is. If you're gonna lose a run, it will probably happen in the second or third ante simply because you didn't come across a viable joker. This makes losing feel a bit too RNG heavy for my liking, but it's not terrible by any means. After the first time I cleared the game, I don't think I ever lost in the later rounds again, so a bit more suspense near the end probably would have been nice. With that said, as the goal eventually becomes more about seeing how far you can get in endless mode rather than just clearing the main 8 antes, suspense pre-endless mode probably isn't that important. There is plenty of it there. Now, I didn't feel as compelled to keep playing it as I did with something like Slay the Spire because there didn't feel like a satisfying end for me to work toward. Beating the corrupted heart was something I wanted to do from the moment I got my first clear, but there's nothing really like that in Balatro. I know that doesn't matter all that much to most people who play roguelike deck builders though, so this is probably only a downside for people like me who need to see a credit roll to feel like they actually accomplished something. But yeah, it's a really great game that I'd recommend to anyone who wants their brain to go burr, and I think that using poker as its base makes it the perfect game to suggest to the normies in your life, as it will give them something familiar to latch onto. Along with Balatro, I also spent a bunch of time playing a different deck builder, really the original deck builder, Dominion. It has long been one of my favorite board games. I own way too many expansions for it and have put in countless hours playing with friends. So when I heard there was a digital version with crossplay between Steam and mobile, I dropped a lot of money very quickly. It's just such a good multiplayer game. Even when just considering Dominion's base set, it offers a ton of variability every time you play, and now that it has around a dozen expansions, no two games will ever feel exactly the same. This is why my friends and I keep coming back to it. There is always something new, but the physical version does have one major issue, which is that it takes forever to set up and put away, so you end up losing a lot of potential playtime to just sorting cards. So between that and a lot of my friends living far away, I've been hoping to get a great digital version of it for a while now, and to be honest, I still am hoping for one because this version leaves a decent amount to be desired in terms of presentation and customization options, but it is better than nothing. I just expected more. Like, there is a long-running web-based version of Dominion developed by a different team that doesn't look that much worse and offers more online functionality. It also has a monthly subscription option to access everything instead of needing to buy all the expansions up front, which makes it a much easier entry point. I guess I just hope that this newer version would be definitively better than that one, but it's not. The main thing it has going for it at the moment though is a mobile app that works pretty well, and as that's typically the platform I end up playing it on, this has made it worthwhile for me. However, for non-mobile users, a lot about it needs to improve before I would recommend it over the web version, as that one is a much smaller investment and does some stuff better. Regardless of it being a mediocre digital version, the gameplay itself is always a lot of fun, and it's been awesome to play with friends when I have some free time, as well well as on my phone with strangers when I'm holding a sleeping baby who does not want to be set down. If you have never played Dominion before, I definitely give this or the web-based version a look. You can play the base edition for free, which will give you an idea of how the game works. From there, if you like it, you should determine if you'd rather play on mobile or PC and decide if the investment is worth it for you. All in all, it's a classic game that is loads of fun to play with friends and is well suited for this kind of medium, even if they didn't nail it here. The last game I want to talk about for this video is one I actually played earlier in the year but couldn't talk about because I had to wait for Iron Pineapple to put out his video on it, that being Elden Ring Reforged. Pine asked Yako and I if we'd be down to try out a mod that, among other things, added a difficulty option specifically for multiplayer called Raid Mode, and foolishly, we both said yes. Raid mode is meant to be played by 4+ people, and Pine thought it'd be fun for just the 3 of us to do it, and fun is an interesting word. The mod boosts enemies' aggression, damage, and health, and also gets rid of the cooldown time between their attacks, meaning everything becomes a combo, leaving very few openings to get hits in. The idea of the mode is that it is only possible to do in co-op, which I will say is really cool, and I'd love it if FromSoft had some way to create a similar feeling. There were a handful of times in raid mode where it felt close to impossible and took a considerable amount of banging our heads against the wall to overcome whatever we were on, but it did push us to find the best ways to work together to take out enemies in a way that I've never really experienced before with FromSoft co-op, and it was really satisfying to do. Often frustrating, but still satisfying. As far as Reforged goes, I feel like given the weird way we chose to play it, it's hard for me to speak on how well it rebalances and remixes the game. Raid mode is not the primary mode of the mod, and also doing it with just 3 people is stupid. So my relationship towards Reforged is almost certainly way different than the average person's. With that said, there were a few things I really liked that I do feel like I can speak on a bit. The biggest was the inclusion of rune pieces, which pretty much operate like Korok seeds in that there are hundreds of them hidden throughout the world that you can gather. Some require having a keen eye, and others call for solving little jumping puzzles, and it's just a nice little wrinkle to make traversal more engaging. They can be exchanged for various stat and ability upgrades, so they generally feel worthwhile to get. Admittedly, it did take me a little while to realize how useful they were, so I ended up getting way fewer than Pine and Yako, but regardless, they are a neat addition. Another cool thing is that the mod makes it so using a health or magic flask near an ally will restore their health or magic as well, adding a new layer of strategy to every fight in terms of timing and positioning. We had a lot of fun calling out when we were going to heal and sharing resources, and it made fights really communicative in a way I love in multiplayer games. It also makes a bunch of little changes to the combat that are pretty neat. The 2 that had the biggest impact on my playstyle were the inclusion of the Bloodborne Quickstep instead of a light roll, and generator spells that give FP when used so that you always have access to something even when out of flasks. This allowed me to zoom around the battlefield and also have a way to continuously do ranged attacks, which was a lot of fun. There's also a deflect mechanic that I didn't use much because of the nature of our playthrough, but I think it's an awesome addition that fits perfectly with the combat. Lastly, it has a feature we didn't use because we didn't realize it was there until we had pretty much finished the mod, but you can refight any boss you've defeated, similar to the Reflections of Strength in Sekiro, and I wish that was in the base game so badly. I would love to fight Melania whenever I want without having to play through the entire game again. Now, Reforged was not the only mod we were using. We also had on seamless co-op, which allowed us to stay connected at all times regardless of where we were, and I can't praise this mod enough. Riding across the lands between with the boys just felt so good, and it was nice to not have to jump through constant hoops to be able to play together. It certainly is a bit glitchy at times, but any bugs we ran into were far outweighed by how convenient and nice it was to play the game in this way. Honestly, I think being able to explore the overworld together solves a couple issues I have with Elden Ring's exploration. When playing alone, there are plenty of times where you clear out a cave or dungeon and get a reward that is not relevant to your build and that you can't even really test out unless you go and change your stats. When playing with a group though, who all have different builds, there is a much better chance that what you find will be useful to someone. And yeah, it was just as fun to find a cool weapon for Yako as it was to find one for myself. Admittedly, given that we had all played the game before, we were pretty intentional with the places we explored in order to get specific gear, so I can't guarantee that playing with this mod fully solves that issue, but I definitely think it helps. Yeah, it's a great mod, and it's really the only way this playthrough was possible. If you haven't watched Pine's video, I definitely recommend it, as it dives way deeper into both of these mods and the experience as a whole than I can or will here. There are some things about our playthrough missing from his video though. For instance, I based my whole build around rot damage and called myself the rot god approximately 7,000 times, and he didn't include a single instance of it. So what the fuck, Pine? It should also be noted that Pine and I definitely hamstrung ourselves as we both refused to move off our starting armor aside from when we did meme builds. Had we switched to something better, it certainly would have saved us a few deaths, but as we had casting builds, we mostly ended up being able to get away with it. Still stupid, but I would do it again for the principle of the matter. Lastly, a lot of comments in the video asked why we didn't fight Moog, Lord of Blood, and the truth is we did, but could not beat him. When he would do his second phase transition, he always would heal back up to full even when we were using the Purifying Crystal tier, and as the mod greatly reduces damage when bosses do their transition moves, we couldn't even punish it. Between how aggressive he was because of the mod and the amount of blood fire everywhere, we just couldn't figure it out despite our best efforts. It was the only fight we did where it seemed like even if we grinded it for dozens of hours, beating it still wouldn't be guaranteed, so it didn't seem worth it to put so much time into an optional part of the run. Maybe we'll go back someday, but I don't know. I'm sure it's not impossible to do with 3 people, but it felt impossible. If you do it with a group of 3 though, let me know and I'll leave a comment saying you're better than us. Anyway, playing Reforged on raid mode was a really great time that I would not recommend to anyone, or at least not in the way we did it. If you're going to do raid mode, get at minimum 4 people, but probably more. Despite how frustratingly difficult the mod got at times, I'm happy I got to do it with Pine and Yako. Figuring out how to overcome stuff together made for a really cool experience, and also just hanging out with them is always a great time. So yeah, you know, if you want a way to freshen up Elden Ring, I'd say you definitely should check out Seamless Co-op, and if you've played a lot of Elden Ring and want to add some more challenge and mechanics to the game, give Reforged a look. That's all I've got. I'll see you next time unless I decide to stop doing this. Bye.